Facts about foster care children abused with psychotropic drugs. Whether under the care of Child Protective Services, Department of Family and Child Services, or youth welfare offices, foster children, often removed from family homes because of abuse, are further abused when they are prescribed psychotropic mind-altering drugs. Some U.S. states report that more than 60% of foster children are prescribed mood-altering drugs at a rate 300% above the national average. Already troubled over their circumstances, these children are drugged for emotional and behavioral issues, sometimes with tragic outcome. Take, for example, 7-year-old Gabriel Myers, who didn't want soup for lunch one Thursday in April 2009. He was sent to his room after throwing away his soup, kicking his toys around, and threatening to kill himself. Around 1 p.m., police responded to a frantic call and found Gabriel had hanged himself. He'd been prescribed a cocktail of psychiatric drugs, including an antidepressant that the Food and Drug Administration warned could lead to children committing suicide. Psychiatrists prescribe 93% of the psychotropic medication dispensed to foster youths, according to a 2008 study. In Australia, 1 in 4 foster children are taking psychotropic drugs, and in residential homes where children live in small groups supervised by social workers, the rate of drug use is 50%. Foster children are being medicated with psychotropic drugs at 10 times the rate of other children. In Ontario, Canada, psychotropic drugs are prescribed to nearly half of the state wards, accounting for drug prescriptions at a rate 3 times that of children in the general population. In 2007, in Texas, $37.9 million was spent on psychiatric drugs for foster children. Pharmaceutical companies have played a major role in encouraging their increased use on foster care clients. They participate in aggressive marketing and conduct misleading research about efficacy and safety. A 2-year-old girl was killed after she was removed from her parents' home and placed in Child Protective Services. The United Nations Convention on Psychotropic Substances 1971 requires governments to protect children, including those in foster care, from excessive and unwarranted exposure to psychotropic drugs. Psychotropic drugs can be prescribed only for medical purposes, yet foster care youth are routinely prescribed drugs for behavioral control. This is child abuse on a grand scale. A quote from Richard Wexler, head of the Virginia-based National Coalition for Child Protection Reform. We call it the chemical straitjacket. Denise Crisp, president of the New South Wales Australia Foster Care Association. Children in state foster care systems and juvenile prisons are particularly at risk of overmedication with psychotropic drugs, and under conditions that constitute egregious departures from sound medical practice. A quote from Angela Olivia Burton from CUNY School of Law. All kids in foster care have some story of trauma, like abuse or neglect, so we need to ask the question, how are we dealing with trauma? Further, the fact is that medication does not treat a disorder, it treats the symptoms of the manifestation. Charles Manos, school psychologist. We're taking away their future. By blunting their emotion, we take away children's ability to relate to people, to trust, love, to care for others, or to put themselves in another person's shoes to see how it feels. That's from a neuropsychologist who examined Texas records of children under state care. Child advocates should illuminate that no alternatives were first tried, and/or that the treating physician has given the prescriptions without knowing if less invasive interventions were attempted. Guardians must ensure that psychotropic drugs are not administered improperly to children in foster care as a means of chemical restraint. Bob Jacobs, from the Advocacy Center for Persons with Disabilities Incorporated. In 2010, Florida's Department of Children and Families prohibited foster care children being enrolled in clinical trials for psychotropic drugs. Foster care parents and guardians in any state or country should object to any child under their care being part of a clinical drug experiment.